Hello everybody, this is JD. Tonight I'm going to talk about something, and please don't comment about the little pimple I have on the center of my eyes, between my eyes. But what it's just going to be about is about something Obama seems to have a problem with. And I've been noticing this, especially with the law enforcement within our nation. You might remember when the individual professor got very obnoxious with the police officers, and he had to be let out of his own house, and Obama, without checking into the information about it, made some derogatory remarks about what the police officer done, when in fact the police officer was only following procedures. Now he's doing the same thing. He's telling us, well, if you're Latino and you go to take in Arizona, your kid to get an ice cream cone, you could get arrested. I guess if you're a gangster in Arizona and you got a warrant for your arrest, that can happen. But the truth of the matter is, if you're an average, everyday person in the state of Arizona of Hispanic descent, and you decide to take your daughter for an ice cream cone, and you get in your car and you drive to the ice cream parlor, police officers can't do a thing about it. They cannot stop you. They cannot ask you to prove who you are or anything else. Now, if you decide to take your daughter to get an ice cream cone and you're doing 215, well, let's say the speed limit is 60 and you're doing 85, and they pull you over for speeding, you will be required to prove of ID. Oh, wait a minute now. Well, let me see now. I'm here in Virginia, and when they pull me over for speeding, I got to give them positive ID of who I am. I have to present them with a valid driver's license and a picture ID. Luckily in Virginia, you have both. You have the picture ID on my driver's license. And I got to do that every time they pull me over. Matter of fact, if I'm driving and they're doing a spot check on one of the exits and I go to pull off, they fly cars by and pick mine, then I got to present a valid driver's license and positive ID that I am the owner of my vehicle. You know, Obama, why don't you do one of your comments about the Virginia spot checking, how they could be using that to stereotype and select certain people. They could call it random, but they can actually pick the people they want. I mean, they might say, oh, today we're going to do only people in blue cars. I mean, that would be doing the exact same thing. Obama, read the law of the land. The law, as Congress put, that requirement of each state, each city, each county, each police officer for duties they will perform in search of illegal aliens, as it is written. And you will see that the Arizona bill that the governor signed in effect actually runs a little bit short of what Congress passed. It doesn't do it all. They actually do a little bit less. But you see, that's the difference between Obama and me. Before I go criticize somebody, I'm going to do a lot of research. I started looking into that law in Arizona and comparing it to what Congress, and I found out that it's not quite as strong as what Congress has. So, in actuality, if you're a person of Latino descent in Arizona, in accordance to the laws they pass, you have better protection than you do here in Virginia, which doesn't have it. Because in Arizona, it states it will not be done. And if you can prove it, you're going to get off scot-free. Where in Virginia, it doesn't state it, and you could say all you want, and they're going to say, well, we didn't do it, so don't worry about it. And you're stuck. So actually, in Arizona, a Latino is, the way it's written, probably has better protection because the law states they have that protection in the state of Arizona. Where there's a lot of states, that protection isn't stated. So the officers have to watch themselves and make sure they do their job right in Arizona. That's what's happening. And they're enforcing the law of the land, which the president wants to go against then let him speak that way. But don't come up with a silly story about taking his kid for an ice cream cone. Okay? That's the first thing I'm going to talk about. Now, a lot of you people are out there asking and questioning my ability to be president. And I tell you, you don't elect a man. You elect a team. I'm going to talk to you about who I would select for Homeland Security Secretary. It's a man I want that's been thoroughly trained in that aspect. A man whose whole life actually was dedicated to the security of our nation. A man who has been taught how to perform the duties. But not only that, a man who, when an emergency can happen, can quickly and efficiently get the items needed and the supplies needed to that area more than anybody else. A man who was trained in that for years and has demonstrated that ability above all else. For example, look at Katrina. The hurricane had just passed, and yet that man, right after it passed, had his people there assisting and helping immediately. In the position of Secretary of Homeland Security, he would also have the availability of the military, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. Though he wears a uniform, he is not a military individual. Actually, his organization is a civilian organization. He is approved by Congress and appointed by the Senate. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Commandant of the Coast Guard. That's right. The man in charge of the Coast Guard. That should be the Secretary of Homeland Security. Who is responsible for all our ports up and down the coast? Who is responsible for the rivers? Who is responsible for our borders almost everywhere except for Mexico? And even there, he has a lot of responsibility. Who's responsible for what comes in and out of the country? The Commandant of the Coast Guard. Who runs all our ports? Inspections. Who provides the pilots to bring the ships in? What training do they get? It all comes under Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is responsible for the security of this nation on 3/4 of its borders. Give it the other quarter. He is trained from the time he enters the Coast Guard till he becomes Commandant on those procedures. He's trained on how to deal and handle with drugs. He's trained in how to deal and handle with people trying to get into the country illegally, as well as those legally. He assists those who need assistance, even they may be trying to get here illegally. When a ship sinks in the Gulf or in the Atlantic Ocean from Haiti or Cuba, they're there to assist. He is trained and has the ability to do the job. And besides that, as president, I could go to him directly and say, what's going on? And if it's not done right, how come? And he knows he will have to answer. So as and know this now, Commandant, Secretary of Homeland Security will be, and I'm stating this now so you all know that, Homeland Security will be the Commandant of the Coast Guard. I thank you for your time, and this is the type of thought I will give to each and every member of my cabinet. You all have a nice day. This is JD.